we had 50 people make over $1 million a year.
That's crazy.
And we had 2 people make over $10 million that year. Quarterback money. That's crazy.
Yeah, but there's only one guy who made hundreds of millions from courses, and it's you. What is up, everybody? This is Michael Second. I'm joined by my amazing co-founder and co-host Simran Sandhu, and another person. Today we have Ankur Nagpal, founder of Teachable, which sold for hundreds of millions of dollars. He's joined us here at Morning Brew's headquarters at our awesome studios, and we're excited to get to know you, man.
I'm stoked. Let's do this.
Yeah, let's do it. So how old were you when you sold your company for that ridiculously filthy amount of $250
I had
million?
just turned 31. I started the company when I was 24, ran it for 7 years. My birthday was in February, sold it in March, right when we went into lockdown. And yeah, it was a good time.
That's like a good time to, I guess, get into lockdown. You're like, wow, I got everything together.
It was so anticlimactic because I was like, all this, like, okay, this is the biggest champagne problem in the world, right? But all this money hits your bank account. I'm like, cool, what do I do now? Well, you can't leave the house. You're like literally like stuck at home and couldn't do anything. But yeah, it was all
were you the only founder of that? Like you were like the only founder of the company?
I was the only major founder. I had a co-founder early on. He left after a year. So yeah, I owned about half the company at exit.
That's crazy. Yeah. So when you exit for hundreds of millions like that, you can just see that shit in your bank account?
Yeah, you just get a giant wire transfer. Also, no taxes are withheld, right? So if you get a salary, taxes are withheld. Here, you get the entire amount and then you pay taxes. So
that's nice because then you can just see that massive amount before Uncle Sam takes his cut.
Correct.
But then it's probably even more just sad when you have to see all that money go.
It hurts your brain.
But also remember, this time the markets were freaking out. Like you got all this money, but the stock market fell. Like the day we announced the deal was the biggest single stock market crash in history. So markets were freaking out. There was a ton of uncertainty. No one knew what was happening. But yeah, it was a good time.
So you would say you got like pretty lucky on timing?
I can argue either side of it, right? Like at the end of the day, because our business doubled when we went into lockdown. So we were making about $25 million a year when we sold the company. 2 months after we sold the company, we were making $50 million a year because online education just doubled. But at the same time, like overall, I'm so grateful. I think the worst thing is when people are like, life works out for them and they're like kind of cranky assholes or like, oh, could have gone so much better. In general, I'm just grateful.
Right.
But Teachable wasn't your first business, right? Like you've been doing businesses since you were a kid and in college too.
Yep. Teachable was my first adult business. Like when I was in college, you guys were probably children back then. Back in 2007, Facebook released
I was a kid.
Facebook platform where you could have these silly little Facebook apps like, answer personality quizzes and get your results or send your friends a gift or whatever. And that shit blew up when I was in college. So I did that, but that wasn't a grown-up business since it was just me and, we're printing a bunch of cash, but we didn't have investors. We weren't like building any enterprise value. So Teachable was the first adult business, but yeah, I was always doing stuff.
No, it's cool.
So you started Teachable in 2013. Like you were really early to courses. Like I don't remember a lot of people slinging courses back. Like now it's obviously in vogue.
Yeah.
Anybody who like runs an e-commerce business actually makes more money from their course than their actual core business, which is hilarious.
So I got that start by, I don't know if you know this platform, Udemy at the time. Mm-hmm. So we had a course on Udemy, me and my buddy, and first we were just creators and we were like, oh, we're making like, $2,000 a month, but there's no way of scaling it beyond that. Since Udemy took a big revenue share, you couldn't buy ads to it since the lifetime value went to other people. So first built it basically for ourselves, and then a few months in, we're like, wow, other Udemy creators probably need this. And, only like 6 or 7 months in did we realize, wow, this could be a whole startup.
So Udemy was founded by Aaron Bali, was that correct?
Yeah, and Gagan and a couple of people.
Aaron has a crazy story. Like he's
came
founded
from Turkey, right?
Yeah, he came from Turkey. He built 2 multi-billion-dollar companies.
Oh, that's crazy.
Because the second one was Carbon Health, which we like obviously blew up during COVID. But so why were you you built this for yourself? You were trying to do your own course? You're trying to
So again, to set context, I was 23 at the time. I was living in San Francisco, came to New York for a weekend, as people do, and I'm like, why am I not living here? Moved everything, moved my entire life to New York and kind of just figuring out what to do. Like I was probably going out more than I should, just like being a 23-year-old in New York. Wasn't working, but I was trying different business ideas. And met this guy, Conrad, and we're like, oh, we should create a course on Udemy, make a little bit of money on the side. And that's how it sort of, went from there. But it wasn't like this grand idea of like, oh, let's build this venture-backed startup up front. We're like, let's sling some courses, see how it does, and then build the product for ourselves.
Well, this has happened a few times in your journey where you've taken a substantial amount of time off and just like brainstormed and pushed a few different ideas. And that was a moment of exploration for you as well, right? You've 8 to 10 different ideas that you played around with. So how did you like set on this specific idea and you're like, Teachable is the one for me?
Honestly, it's the only one that worked. It's like you try all these other ideas and you never realize it's not working because I mean, people are nice and people are like, oh, it's a cool idea. I would use it. But then, weeks pass and you find yourself distracted by a new shiny idea. With Teachable, like we just every single month was bigger than the last one. And after like 6 or 7 months, we're like, okay, this is a real business. This has never happened that I've worked on anything where for 7 straight months, there's been progress and uptake where every month is bigger than the last one. So that's when I was like, okay, let me go to San Francisco, raise venture capital and do this the real way.
So like I'm 23, Simi's 24. Like this show is designed for young entrepreneurs. And like
exactly how old I was at the time.
That's what I love though. It's like you were 23 and now you're 34, but we're able to build a business worth hundreds of millions by the time you were 30.
Yeah.
So that's really cool that we can go back in time on that. But I guess young people, we're often working on a ton of different projects. We want to be entrepreneurs. We have this idea, an app for this, a course for Y. There's so much at play. A lot of entrepreneurs we've talked to is like they just know in their heart when the right business is that they're going to pour their energy into it. What would you say about that? And like, how does a young person, how could they know that they're working on the right thing? It's very hard to know in the moment, right?
Yeah.
So I hear this from other entrepreneurs and I call bullshit on this where they're like, man, like I just knew this business is my life's calling because of like the idea or the problem or whatever. Like I wish I could say that was true for me, but no, I didn't care that much about online courses where I'm like, oh, this is like my, life's true purpose or calling. As an entrepreneur, you're just like, you see a business working and then it's like a video game or whatever, right? You want to advance to the next level. You want to grow revenue. And then it just becomes a single-minded focus to make the business bigger every single time. So for me, the reality is what drew me to this was like continued progress. And then you start building a team and then it becomes bigger than you. Then, then you're starting to play for everyone else on the field. And that's when it gets really fun.
Well, you also had a substantial amount of capital at your disposal for that age, right? You had sold a few.
Correct. Exactly. I'd made enough money that I could afford to like not have a job for a couple of years.
At age 23?
At age 21, basically, with the Facebook apps, because we were just making cash. Like,
damn, if we had done the show in 2011, you would have been like,
you've been the guy.
You would have been the host of it.
Yeah. But see, that's interesting. So you had this money and now you're testing out these ideas. Did you ever have like a certain framework or criteria you used, which was like, I'm going to put 10K behind an idea and I'm going to give myself 2 months or 3 months and I'm going to see if there's any merit to this?
Nope. It was pure chaos. It was like complete chaos. There's nothing like sort of tactical about it. Things had gotten kind of dark and dire because it had been a couple of years. Nothing was working. I remember my mom flew to America, like they don't live here, and had the talk. She's like, I think you should work for Facebook, which to me was like the worst thing someone could say because you're trying to build a business. But to my dad's credit, he's like, nah, ignore her. Like, it's fine. Like,
just do your thing.
Yeah, do your thing. Like, we worked really hard in like, middle class jobs so that our son could kind of be a founder, be an entrepreneur, follow his dreams and stuff. But no, for 2 years, it was kind of stressful by that point since nothing was working. And
wait, but you'd banked several $100,000 at age 21.
Yeah.
Why were you doubting yourself at all?
I mean, it's just 2 years of nothing working, right? Like, I think it's very you can kind of lose hope a little bit when you have 10 different ideas and all 10 kind of suck.
Yeah.
And it was still like not bad. Like I still, stuck with the plan and didn't get a job or whatever. I didn't even seriously contemplate it, but my parents wanted me to, or my mom wanted me to.
Do you think the issue was with the ideas or the execution of them?
It's just hard. Like, I don't think, like, I think a 1 in 10 batting average is pretty decent for ideas you tried. And I think it's okay for a lot of people listening to abandon their ideas more. I think we listen to so much like hustle porn of like, oh, Elon Musk is like sleeping in the office. And I see so many people like chasing shitty ideas for too long when really you should just try more ideas and like kill more things frequently versus like dramatizing this like idea of like this entrepreneur who never gives up.
Yeah. Do you believe in the saying like a business lives and dies by the will of the founder?
I think that's generally true in the early days. Eventually, like you build a team around it, and that becomes much more important. I think people overestimate what a single person can do, unless that you're also looking at their ability to hire. Since that, like I think all of Teachable, like I owe so much to the team, and especially the early employees who don't have a founder title, but in a lot of ways are, basically de facto founders.
Yeah. So you came up with the idea for Teachable because you were doing a course. So it was just one of those 10 ideas, right? Which is like, how do I make money? How do I build a business?
I was like
I'm
hustling.
gonna do a course business, right?
And it wasn't even that. It started off, we saw these guys on YouTube, and I'm like, let me find these YouTubers and put their videos on Udemy and make a little take rate. Then we're like, oh, we actually don't need these YouTubers. Their content sucks. We'll create our own content.
Yeah.
And then we're like, oh, this platform sucks. Let's create a platform. But it's all organic. So I think it's okay to chase like small, side hustles to make a little bit of money, and then every month think about what you can do to broaden the scope.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like the reason you're on this show is because you're not a course guy.
Yeah.
You built the platform for the course guys.
Yeah.
There's two types of people. One person takes the low leverage, easy, low hanging fruit business opportunity. They create a course and they make money. They create social media content. Woohoo. I'm making money from a course. But then there's the ultimate player. The ultimate player builds the infrastructure for that
picks and shovels. Picks and shovels.
But there's so many fewer of you than there are creators and course sellers. There's only so many people in the world that can build the platform.
Yep.
Everyone else just participates in that
So
platform.
much. I mean, it's so much harder to build a platform. It took us about, from the time I was playing around with it to the point we got to $1 million in annualized revenue was about 3 years. So many course people make that money in like 6 months.
Yeah.
So it's much, much, much harder.
But you scrapped your way there and you leveraged your network at Berkeley, right? That's where you went to school.
Yep.
And a lot of those people ended up being your early investors, right?
So when I was in Berkeley, I was 19 years old, and I met a bunch of people in Silicon Valley. And it's very easy when you're 19 because people are like, oh, you're so young. Let me introduce you to this person.
Yeah.
Like when you're 25, no one really cares. But when you're 19, so I met all these like incredible Silicon Valley people when I was very, very young. And when it came time to fundraise, I flew back from New York and went straight there and raised a lot of money from them.
Yeah.
At age 19?
Age 19 is when I met them. At age 24 is when I actually and at that point it's great because they've known you for 4 years, 5 years.
Right.
There's a bit of a story. So went back to them.
Yeah.
How did you decide how much money you needed to raise, especially when the idea was evolving so much?
I mean, I would take people always say, oh, how did you decide who to raise from or how much to raise? I mean, anyone that said yes, I took their money. It was like, it was hard.
Yeah.
Like it took 2 months to get the first person to say yes. And eventually, I think we got to $1 million or so, because it sounded like a good number, but took a long time to get the first yes. Like 2 months of like constant, not even rejection. You having a good meeting and then people never replying to you.
What's crazy to me, though, about your story is like how disciplined you were. And what I mean by this is when you sold the company, you guys had raised $12 million and you still had $9 million in the bank.
Yep.
That's like unheard of for like most
insane.
of these founders, right?
Yep.
They just blow through this cash like this.
Yeah. I think it's a different time. I could also argue that we may have been too conservative because, like, to me, I would get stressed out with a high burn rate, right? Like, you can also like argue the opposite. Like, wow, if you had $9 million in cash, could you have better deployed that money? But no, our business was inherently also very easy since like we're not selling physical products. It's all digital products.
And the distribution comes from the creators themselves.
Exactly. So it was very efficient from a cash perspective.
Yeah.
Like some businesses are just like hard. They're like a hardware business.
They're so CAC intensive too.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Like especially for D2C.
Yep.
It's like we're going to burn all of our D2C money on marketing.
Yeah,
That's just
that makes
what
sense.
it takes.
Oh, and part of it was also our failing. Like we never could get paid ads to work. So as a result, we never spent much. But like every time we tried it, they just like our funnels were garbage. Like we would spend $100,000 to make $50,000, and we're like, this is stupid. So we shouldn't do this.
So did you get the Teachable.com domain name off the bat? How'd you get that?
No. So we started. The company was called Fedora. Use Fedora.com. Terrible domain name.
Fedora, the hat.
It was awful. It was awful.
Yeah, it's just trash.
Yeah, trash, completely trash name. But I was like, I don't want to spend time on a name because it didn't really matter since people were creating courses and it had their branding. But eventually, a year and a half in, we're like, okay, we need to come up with a new name. Started looking at domains. Teachable.com was like $25K, which wasn't bad at all. Like, let's do it.
Nice.
You guys built this flywheel too, right? Like, so you charged the creators and not the actual like students.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it was all supply side. All I cared about is the creators paying us money, and then they could keep all the money they made. So
how did you think about that? How did you even
crazy.
like fall into that business model?
we literally stole Shopify's business model. There's nothing unique or innovative about it. We literally stole Shopify's business model. And Toby from Shopify eventually became an investor too, because I really respect that company. But
Yeah.
But yeah, like we started
Casual
out.
flex.
We started out by taking a percentage on course sales, but then within 4 months, our metrics were all over because course sales would be up and down. I'm like, let's just charge the creator. And yeah, then that always became our business model. We also stole Shopify's payments revenue business model, where eventually we like did the same thing they did, allowed people to to process payments, built our own payment processor, made money off that. By the time we sold the company, that was a bigger business than the monthly fees the creators paid.
Wow.
Let's talk platforms and creators, because it's such a hot topic, and it has been for the past 10 years, wherein you have platforms and you have creators that aren't benefiting or being able to monetize off the platform. If you look at this company emerged recently, it's called Kick, and it was founded by Ed Craven and this other guy. They built a crypto gambling business in Australia, stake.com, and now they're using Kick as a marketing funnel for the casino. But they're throwing off hundreds of millions into this.
Crazy.
They're doing F1 sponsorships, and they just signed XQC recently for, I think, 70 million or 100 million over 2 years, right? So your platform function, and that the creators paid you to be on it, right? How does that translate to these other environments where creators and platforms are communicating
So the way I
together?
think about it is a lot of times people, like I think the platform where you grow is different from the platform where you monetize. And a lot of times people conflate the two and make less money. Like for instance, yes, you can make some money of YouTube ads and it's getting more and more, but that's an audience building tool. We looked at ourselves in the creator stack or whatever you want to call it as a monetization tool. You've already built your audience elsewhere. You convert them on email. We're the place where they literally hit pay and like you deliver the experience. So as a result, we couldn't defend taking a percentage because really a lot of our creators, right? Like we had Seth Godin had a course on our platform and he made a lot of money. He could have literally told people, mail me a check, and some percentage of people would have done that. The platform is sort of irrelevant. We were just the place where the payments came at the end. But we're purely a monetization platform. Like the creator has done all the work. We're just a technology solution for them to actually like charge the credit card and deliver the experience.
I feel like that works better. Like, look at all these creators on Substack being mad about the splits.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it just causes controversy.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Which we're like, you keep all. They basically kept all the money. Like if they were on our medium tier, which is $99 a month, they kept all the money, and then really we're just a part of their tool stack. We're not a place for them to build a distribution.
Right. So you believe in, instead of taking a small percentage of a lot of GMV, take like a flat, nice, solid $99 subscription from a smaller group of individuals is a better business model?
I think they're both great business models. I think companies mess up by doing both. So I think like Shopify is an incredible business. Amazon is an incredible business. Doing both is really hard.
Yeah.
So we picked that we're the supply side platform. We tried being a marketplace because that is valuable. We just failed at it. Like it's also a valuable business. It's just completely different.
But you grew very organically, right? Like it was the teachers would go create these courses and then people would consume this information and then they would want to become teachers as well, right? Like that was kind of the
That
organic
worked,
flywheel.
but that also, there was a ton of effort we did to get the teachers on the platform. Like there was everything, like early days, it was very unscalable. Like I would cold email people. I would like go to conferences, do all these things. Eventually what worked for us is we used creators and we did a bunch of events where we highlighted successful stories. So we do a live online conference and get like 50, 60,000 people to sign up for the live conference. And then we'd sell our platform to teachers there. So we were good at that type of marketing. Like the good thing with, like when a creator is successful, like we could tell that story and they have people in their audience that want to be creators. So that loop started working.
50,000 people at a webinar. That's crazy.
It's crazy. It's such a high though. Like you're on a live workshop. You're like, all right, if you're watching me, like type this in chat and you have like 10,000 people type at the same time. It's pretty sick.
So this space is really saturated now.
Oh, it's horrible now.
It's horrible. It's probably a bloodbath for CAC and for fighting for the few creators who can actually drive.
And courses are down year over
valuable
year. For the first time I've ever seen courses like ever, because they spiked so much during COVID that now everyone I know is making less money in courses this year than the year before.
So let's go back to that thing we were discussing before we started airing, which was a lot of these courses, they aren't actually valuable, but they're marketed as being valuable. It's like, I need to get from point A to B, and my course is going to take you to B.
Yep.
And that is what it's sold on. So like, how do we think about courses in general? Like, I personally have like never really bought a course before. Like,
this sounds bad as someone that ran a course platform, but I've never taken a course. I've like,
you sound like the Pepsi CEO is like super slim.
yeah, he's like not getting high on his own supply. So there's just such a big variance in course creators. There are some courses that like truly changed people's lives. Like, what's it called? I mean, you've seen Tacky McCormick. He's like, pretty successful as a blogger. He started out by taking David Perel's like rite of passage course, $2,000 writing course. You look at the alumni on that course, they've gone on to do great things. And then there's some people that I'm not going to name, but they're just grifters. Like they're just selling
Grifters.
trash information, overly
Selling
marketed.
garbage to garbage. men.
Yeah. So there's just a big variance, but there are a lot of there's a lot of really good, legitimate courses and
Yeah.
creators. But yeah, there's a lot of trash.
Well, Ali Abdaal is a good example, right? That guy is one of the kind of like, he's like the Mr. Beast of courses, right?
yeah, absolutely. Tiago Forte is someone else who's been like just
Oh, the
crushing it.
second brain.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
I like the concept behind that.
Yeah, and these are all like just phenomenal course creators who like put everything into it, and their students like it's truly transformed their lives. But then we have other people who like, again, I'm not going to name, but like they're selling courses for $2,000-$3,000, promising results, and their students aren't that happy. The thing is, to build a successful business over the long term, you have to have happy students. So we see like a lot of people will have one big launch, but unless your launches are consistently getting bigger and bigger, and the only way that happens is if people who take the course have a great outcome.
Yeah. How do you create a happy student though? Like I went to Michigan and I'm happy. Like I
Yeah.
went to a top business school. Like
Yeah.
woohoo.
Yeah.
But I don't really remember anything I learned.
I think if you somehow change someone's lives, they never shut up talking about it. So even if you can do that to a small percentage of people,
Yeah.
you get these super fans or whatever.
Right. You get that organic marketing flywheel where it's like they're just going to
Correct.
keep pushing.
Correct.
this to everyone.
It is hard though, right? Because like courses in general, so many people buy courses and never take them. They don't look at them. Like it's
Yeah.
crazy, especially if a course is cheap. It's just an astounding number of people will buy a course and never watch a single thing.
Well, it goes back to like a theory I have on business and that the world is run on forgotten shit.
yeah.
Subscriptions, things you bought you never used more than once.
Yeah.
All this stuff.
Big debate we had is even at Teachable, about a quarter of our customers or a third of our customers never made a single sale.
Yeah.
But we still sent them their billing email every single month. Like we debated this. We're like, if we don't send them the email, churn will be lower. But we still sent them an email every single time we charged their card. Because
Do you think there was like, I was like, oh, I don't want to cancel. Like I still have this dream that I could sell.
correct. And we also tested people that are paying for it are more likely to do anything. We had a free tier. If you're on our free tier, you're never going to do anything. So even the pain of seeing that amount made people more likely to do it.
So you guys probably implemented a ton of scrappy growth hacks. Like, curious to hear just to some of them or ones that come.
I think the one that worked the best
Yeah.
is you could enter your Udemy email and password, and it just pulled all your content in like 4 seconds.
Really?
was
So you
crazy.
use the API from another
There was no
company?
API, so we basically kind of reverse engineered the API they were using, and like we just logged in as you and downloaded all your shit with the person's permission because it's their content, uploaded it all, and yeah, that was crazy for the first year because Udemy people could onboard in like minutes.
When did you realize that you started by there's this market and you're gonna steal market share and the pie is gonna remain the same. When did you realize that this is a growing pie and me and Udemy can both be very successful?
Probably year two when we realized that like we had a onboarding survey where people were coming from, and we realized Udemy people were like less than 5% of our audience. And our biggest competition at the time, before the market started growing, was shitty WordPress plugins. I never realized how big the world was of people like with these garbage WordPress sites, and that became a bigger market. And then eventually, 3 years in, people started talking about the creator economy. That was not a thing. No one talked about that.
Yeah.
But simultaneously, what was happening is Instagram, YouTube, all these platforms were growing. We didn't even realize that was our business, but at some point, it became clear that this cool thing was happening.
Any kind of maybe less apparent advantages of being at the forefront of an emerging trend?
There's just a ton of stuff like we got to see by being so early on, right? Like I think the whole creator economy developed around us, and it also developed internationally at the same time. Like we never realized, for instance, that we never intended to be an international platform. We looked at our metrics and we had people from all over. Any place you could pay with credit cards became big for us. And the company we sold to, Hotmart in Brazil, for them, the creator economy is bigger than it is in the US. So
Really?
yeah, it's crazy. Like it's just,
Are they doing the whole social shopping live stream thing like they are in China out there?
they like Brazil has a little bit of it, but I think all of the social shopping shit has kind of died down a little, at least from what I've heard. Yeah, but I remember when they told us about this company Hotmart in Brazil, they told us the amount of money this company was making, and I just didn't believe it because I'm like, oh, the Brazilian economy is like smaller than the U.S. economy. There's no way a company's making X dollars or whatever. But yeah, it's crazy.
What was the split in terms of like, say, big name creators on the platform and the revenue they generated versus say like micro niche creators who also had very passionate audience with a lot of depth there?
So, you know how people say there's an 80-20 rule? Ours was more 85-15. 85% of revenue came from 15% of creators. But by the end, it was like pretty crazy. Like I think the last year that I was fully involved, we had 50 people make over $1 million a year.
That's crazy.
And we had 2 people make over $10 million that year. $10 million from courses.
That's so.
You guys are just printing millionaires over there.
Yeah. The 10 millionaires is what blew my mind. Like we had someone make $20 million cumulative in the platform. That's like quarterback money. That's crazy.
Yeah, but there's only one guy who made hundreds of millions from courses, and it's you.
I would argue all of our competitors.
10 million, that's cute.
I would argue. I mean, are there other competitors as far as like basically there were three
Kajabi.
or four.
I just saw it today from Kajabi.
Yeah.
It said there's $5 million made per day on Kajabi.
Yeah, which I would believe. I mean, we again by the time when I was around, we were $2.5 million a day quite often. So
okay, let's talk about the evolution of the competing platform. So, Udemy's first.
Yep.
EDX,
edX, yeah.
Okay, edX, Udemy probably around the same time.
They had Coursera, Udacity. They're all marketplaces. Skillshare.
How is there room for all these massive brands? And
most of them died. Like is the reality of it. Like the marketplaces didn't do that well. In our immediate space, there was Kajabi, this company Thinkific, who I feel bad for because they went public at the worst possible time, and now they're just like. They're actually a decent enough company, but the public market had just destroyed them.
Was Kajabi around when you started?
Kajabi had been around like 10 years before we started. They've been around forever. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, they've been around since like the late 2000, like 2009 or something. Yeah.
So you probably knew you were early to an extent, but there were also 3 massive.
I didn't know of Kajabi till like year 2 or 3. Like like I didn't even know it existed, to be honest.
But there were massive players in the market you were aware of. What gave you the gumption? I'm like 23. Like why would I be able to go after this?
Ignorance. I had no idea they existed. Like
you didn't know Udemy existed?
Udemy was a marketplace, so that was different, right? So we could argue that they're the Amazon, we're the Shopify, so that was fine. Kajabi was the direct parallel. I had no idea they existed because Kajabi's entire audience was sketchy internet marketers, which like we never got to for a while.
It's almost better like not to find out about your competitor because if you haven't heard of it, they're probably not very good.
Yeah. In general, that's why I especially for people listening, I think being young is awesome because like kind of just don't know the shit you don't know.
Right.
And very often it's like a tool because I think when you get older, you're like, you just like know more. So therefore you know all the reasons you fail, all the reasons to not try shit. But like when you're young, you kind of don't give a shit. You just like do stuff.
Who did you lean on then for like advice and learning, especially like you don't know what you don't know?
So it was really helpful to raise money from other founders. So like the first investor we had was a guy named Matt Brezina. He was in the first Y Combinator class. He was like super helpful. We raised like Naval was one of our big investors, founder of AngelList. So like all of these like founders were great because they were no bullshit. Like you ask them for advice or whatever. Most of the time they didn't even have tangible advice, but I'd be like, yo, this happened, and it's really messed up. And they'd be like, yeah, it's always messed up. And that conversation made me feel better. It's shit like that, that like from a psychology perspective was super helpful.
How did you filter through what was good advice and what now would feel like bad advice?
I think in general, I'm a pretty independent-minded person. So like, if anything, I'm bad at taking advice. So I think that sort of helped and served me as a founder where I would, get advice. And if it's not what I wanted to listen to, I kind of ignored it. But I think, just like a lot of people had bad experiences with investors, but I loved our investors because they, one, left me alone. Like they were never in my shit unless I wanted anything. And when I did, they were super helpful. But ultimately they had trust that, you got it, do this your way, and we'll back you no matter what you want to do, which is exactly the kind of support I wanted.
That's cool. I just think about our own journey, and we would get so much conflicting advice. It was like opposite ends of the spectrum.
See, what's interesting is, everyone gives you advice based on what benefits them.
Correct. Exactly.
So if we met someone with a lot of money or who had a lot of connections to investors, they'd be like, oh, absolutely, let's get this round going.
Incentives are so important because your incentives as a founder are going to be different from every single person around you. Like all your investors will have different incentives. Your employees will have different incentives, and that's fine. But just consider incentives at stake before deciding whose advice to take. And also just never take tactical advice on what your business should do from an investor because most of them have been out of the game so long and they'll just try and pattern match. Like we had some investor being like, oh, I heard Snapchat's a big channel because one of their other companies is using Snapchat. And it's not that useful, right? You know your business better than they do.
Yeah. How do you think about new industries and ideas that you think young people should be getting into now? Do you have any insights on that as to what you would advise like the 21, 22-year-old to look at?
I mean, like it sounds very cliched, right? But I think just doing the things that like are kind of fun, and then finding a way to make a business from that, right? Or sort of like that was always my blueprint. And like again, I was always hustling. I was always like, oh, how can I make a little bit of money here, a little bit of money there, and then like scaling it from there. So I don't know. I don't like some people, and again, the courses parallel is we'd get people being like, what course is profitable so I can make a course on that or whatever. And I just think that's the wrong way of like doing anything. Like I wouldn't go into an industry because other people say it's a good industry to go into versus like just something that you think is kind of fun to mess around with.
Yeah. I mean, content and courses are a good way to like get rich, but like if you want to get wealthy, like you have to build something with enterprise value.
Yeah, you have to own equity, right? You have to own equity in something
but like
valuable. Yeah.
Right? It's actually an interesting concept. Like there's only, again, like I'll go back to what I said earlier, there's only a few people who can build the infrastructure that's worth $1 billion.
Even
For any industry.
even creators are realizing this now. The number of creators I see, like the big ones, right? The ones who are not worried about cash, who now realize it's all equity.
Yeah.
They realize like yes, you can do brand deals, you can do this stuff, you can make $1 million here, $1 million there, but
We realized that early on. It's like we can do agency services and throw off cash. We can do content and get brand deals, and we can build something really cool. But it's like we have to build this for exit in order to be in our position to do a higher leverage business in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like the tax benefits also, like that's the other thing. The government also, it's a double whammy because the government will tax you so much worse on any kind of cash. But as opposed to if you're building equity value,
Right.
you can basically optimize the hell out of it and pay almost no taxes. So it's like a double whammy.
Well, that's kind of the genesis for Ocho, right?
Yep, I realized I knew like nothing about money or personal finance in America, and it blew my mind the kind of things you can do in the tax code. Like everyone knows it, right? Like rich people don't pay any taxes, blah blah blah. But I hired lawyers, consultants to figure out how to structure things around our acquisition. Super eye opening, and I'm like, everyone should know this. Every single business owner should be able to take advantage of these things, and that's our goal. How we productize it, we're figuring it out. The first product is a retirement account for self-employed people, but we're going to keep building these like little tax things.
Is that a novel product?
A lot of people have no idea how it works. It's called a solo 401k. It's your
Yeah.
own one-person 401k, and you can defer $66,000 in taxes every year. You can invest it in any asset class you want, and there's just like shitty tech to do it before this.
It's crazy, right? The moat that the rich have is obviously capital, but second is like information and advice.
Institutional knowledge. It's like generational wealth, right? Like your parents like talk to you about this, and I didn't know any of this. And our goal is to like democratize all of this information and just make it accessible to people and make the tools really easy for people to do and see what happens.
So you sold your company for hundreds of millions. Is there anything you can share in terms of how you structured things to save money on taxes?
Yeah. So the biggest thing that like every entrepreneur should like know, the biggest tax rule is called QSBS, Qualified Small Business Stock. And the way it works is if you have a C Corp and you hold shares for 5 years, you pay no taxes on $10 million, which is pretty wild.
It's amazing.
It's kind of messed up, right? The people who don't need these tax breaks are the ones that get these tax breaks.
Well, I think that was Obama in the Great Recession and was like, okay, we need to give business owners a bone.
I think it may have been I think during his administration, it was 100% tax break. Before that, it was only a 50% tax break. So it became better during his thing.
To incentivize people to start businesses in America.
Correct. But what's crazier is you can then also do things which I was not able to fully set up in time to multiply the $10 million benefit. So you can, instead of having $10 million tax-free, have $30 or $40 million tax-free. Yeah. No federal taxes. And if you live in 45 states, including New York, no state taxes as well. So it's just insane. And it's like, that's what I'm saying about.
Let's be real though. The only time you really need that advice is when you're on the cusp of a massive windfall.
I would say the best time, there are advantages to doing it before then, because you ideally want to do it before the company's been marked up too much. So I tell people
makes sense.
Between a Series A and a Series B. I know also, I know a lot of people who like don't have product market fit and they're optimizing their taxes, and I'm like, dude, like, you know, like
bro, bro's ready.
like
Wishful
now,
thinking.
Yeah, now's not the time. But I would say like maybe right before a Series B or something. Like I would not put it off too late, but
Yeah.
But
That's where you're at. You target people between Series A and Series B.
No, so right now our product is for all types of business owners. Like right now, our biggest market, frankly, is people who are spinning off a few $100K in cash in business income and they're paying a lot in taxes. Like with business income, there's just so many things you can do.
Well, the people who get penalized the most in America are those who make between $100K and $1 million a year.
Yeah, but W-2 specifically, like if you make a ton of money working at Facebook, that's the worst type of income to have. If like you have a one-person business, you can optimize a lot of stuff, but high salary is the single worst type of income.
Yeah, 600 to 700, 800K. You think that's amazing? Half is gone.
Yeah, I mean, Warren Buffett said he's always had a lower tax rate than his secretary. It's just kind of wild.
So filthy.
Yeah, exactly.
This country's fucked.
Yeah, this country's super messed up. So our goal is let's democratize this information and see, like, I can't change the tax code, but we can just exploit like all of these loopholes, show everyone what they can do.
Yeah.
It's up to them what
We had a fucked legal situation, dude. We were like a LLC. I was a sole proprietor.
Everyone messes that.
Then it was a C corp, and then we had to. There's these taxes, and these accountants sucked.
Yep,
it's like
exactly.
I feel like there's this trend in business right now, wherein wealthy elites are trying to democratize the things that make elites wealthy, and it's like, is that even possible?
Yeah, I mean, I think keeping this information less siloed in itself is a very good thing. Like, I think it's very hard for anyone to change the tax code. Like, and it's not another thing. Tax code adds 150,000 words a year or something bizarre. Like, there's not a single person in the world that knows the tax code. And a lot of things you ask lawyers, like, I thought the tax code is very clear. You ask lawyers what the right answer is, they're like, oh, it's subject to interpretation. So very often people will read this, they'll interpret it a certain way, they'll wait till the IRS challenges them, then goes to court, and then whatever happens in court is a precedent. The whole system is just so messed up.
Yeah, you just have to get rich enough to surround yourself with those people.
Or, I mean, dude,
or use your platform.
I think a lot of this can be democratized, especially because
can it really be served up programmatically in a platform to tell you what the hell your situation is?
I think that you can get to like 80% of it. I think like there's always going to be a room for specialized lawyers and consultants, but even that, like I used to think lawyers and consultants know everything. No, they can just tell you like, oh, you can take this move and it has this level of risk and it's up to you.
So who would be like the ideal business size that would use your platform? Because my hunch is that like if you're doing hundreds of millions or billions, you probably have your own.
Right now, the perfect sweet spot I would say is business owners with like 200,000 in profit. Like I think that's the amount where we can just optimize.
That's so healthy.
Yeah,
that's like a huge target market.
Yep.
How do you charge them?
So we have We have a self-serve just for a retirement product that's like $300 a year, all the way to like our premium consulting service, which is $1,000 a month, and everything in between.
And you're doing zero marketing, correct?
Yeah,
or
zero
like,
paid. Zero paid. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fintech, like paid money for fintech or paid marketing for fintech was just completely messed up. Like when the whole FTX blow up shit happened, but like all the CACs were just out of whack. And we're like, we're not going to play this game. We're not going to pay anyone $1 until we get the core business working well. And look, we're 11 months in. Early signs are good, but we're still not there.
The CACs are freaking hard in fintech.
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly. It's like no one's making money.
There's like a little bit of
Robinhood was
very
paying like
protective
$600 or
over
$700 an account. It was just crazy.
Yeah, people are so protective over their cash. They don't want to move it into another platform.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's so as I said, I'm fine. Again, like you have like I'm more patient this time. Like if it takes us 2 years to get a product dope enough to like truly market, that's fine. I'm okay.
What's the scope of services? Is it this special 401k? I think that's great. What else? Is it like
we pair you with a financial planner that'll look at your business and your personal stuff and like just give you like optimizations. Like, oh, if you have $10,000 in income a month, you want to give X to your 401k, Y to your HSA. Like this is how you stack your accounts because that's beneficial for you.
What is the ceiling for this business?
Like as in like what could this business become or
like what's the North Star for you guys?
The long term, it's the company that inspires me the most in this space is Charles Schwab. Like Charles Schwab, they're kind of, I mean, you don't think of them as a startup, but compared to all the other banks, they're like the young kid. Schwab only came out in 1975. All the other banks are like 200 years old. And what they did is they treated their customers like intelligent people. Like they stopped, prior to Schwab, people were like Wolf of Wall Street calling clients, selling shitty products. Schwab is like, our customers are smart. We're going to just build a brokerage that like puts their best interests first. And they kind of blew up the game. They're like $150 billion brokerage right now. And that's our
They were the first to slash broker fees on stock.
Correct. They're the first ones.
Something about Charles Schwab, it's like, that's rich.
Yeah. I mean, he's still around.
He's still giving interviews on like CNBC all the time.
He invested in a fintech company too. Like one of our companies are like, we raised money from Chuck. And I'm like, who's Chuck? Charles Schwab.
So
No, now you can pull a Toby thing with Shopify. Now you need to get him as an investor for Ocho.
The problem with having an Indian name is I could never name the company after. It's not gonna have the same cachet.
Yeah, Nagpal Industries.
It's not gonna,
All the way to the top.
yeah.
I think what's really interesting about you is the tie-in between your last business and this new business. Again, you're charging a nice, solid subscription fee to the person who's running an independent business.
Yeah.
You're supplying infrastructure and a platform for independent entrepreneurs, just like you did before.
Correct. And part of that is also like I hate the financial advisor space. Like they have AUM fees, like assets under management fees, typically 1% or more. People don't realize how toxic they are because like people don't run the math. But the average financial advisor is like a grifter. Like they're like charging 1% plus to like index into the stock market. And if you run the math like over 20 or 30 years, like they're like just destroying your returns. So no AUM fee was a big part of our pitch.
Well, I also
1%
believe that.
Returns.
I also believe that like who hits us up to be our financial advisors are like our previous classmates. And I'm like, dude, I was in class with you. Like I would not trust you with my money.
Like, bro, you weren't even awake. That was econ, bro.
No, one of the kids in my class is like a degenerate gambler. And then like
he's like a financial advisor now.
He's like, Simi, let me manage your money. I was like, dude, like
you're the last
person. Yeah.
And like it goes all the way to the top, right? Like you have like JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, all of them too. Like they have these like massive private wealth businesses like built for a different time and just like insane fees. They're all hidden. There's no transparency in this industry. It's pretty messed up.
Okay, so what do the elites do once the common man has cracked their code?
What do you mean?
They create new rules. They create new procedures.
I do think the general trend though is it has gotten a lot better. Like think about whatever you may say about Robinhood, they did change the game, right? Prior to that, like even buying shares in something was like this like really expensive transaction. Now that's killed all over. So I do think things can converge in a better direction.
So question for you, what are some of like the key insights from the last business that you now transferred over here?
So doing a lot of things differently, but I like my deep inner fear is we're just going to make different mistakes this time. So I don't think this is going to be like some kind of utopia, but yeah, a lot of stuff. I mean, we're going a lot slower in marketing. Last time, I think what we did is we marketed a product with okay product market fit, and that hurt us as we grew. Like we were just like growth. Now we're like, you know what? We'll go slower. We're okay having fewer customers for longer. That's one. Two, I'm hiring people kind of differently. Like last time I indexed a lot on like people with like nice sounding resumes who worked at like impressive sounding companies. And then I realized they don't know anything more than, because it's very often when you're at a good company that disguises not doing shit. Like if you're at a company that's inherently very, very good and growing, like if you run marketing at Facebook, like, I mean, Facebook.
You're not doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So this time I'm indexing on people that really want to work at a startup. I'm also like, even the soft stuff, like this time I'm really indexing on people I want to like hang out with every day because the reality is like that's what really ends up happening. But yeah, fighting to keep the company as small as possible, not marketing, doing a bunch of stuff different.
And it's probably growing pretty organically with word of mouth.
It is growing organically.
If you know, you know. It's like
it's growing organically,
Ocho.
but like I would still say we don't have product market fit. It's not growing organically at the rate I would want it to grow before I'm like, okay, fine, this is like working and let's turn up the dial.
Yeah.
So what are marketing channels you're actually bullish on for a business like this?
So I think connecting with, I think just creators, like whether it's having a voice ourselves, like, speaking up, like I like Twitter has been a big channel for us so far, and just like sharing a lot of this content is inherently quite shareable, right? You teach someone how to like do things with a tax code that is inherently quite shareable. So doing a lot of that upfront. Eventually, the thing we're measuring a lot is what's our organic uptake. Like how many people are having a good enough experience to get their friends to do it, and we're seeing a good number, but we want to see more. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like content marketing too would be big for you, which is like just education, building an education media brand.
Yep, exactly. So
sucking business owners in.
Yeah,
you know how many people in America are making between $200 and $1 million a year with their small business? We have as many millionaires here as the entire population of Canada, which is just like wild. Crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
You know what's kind of an interesting thing I heard you say on a different interview, which was when you were building out the Facebook apps, apps that pertain to actual education did not do well. It was the gimmicky apps.
Oh, Facebook apps, yeah, you'd have like, I don't know, something with value and no one cared, and then you'd have a quiz, how good a lover are you, answer 5 questions about you, and that shit went viral. So it was stuff like that. But
so that was the moneymaker back then, but then you proceeded to go build 2 education-based businesses, which is so funny to me.
But it's like, I mean,
Wait, you did a clickbait company?
Yeah, the Facebook
that
apps. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great place to cut your teeth because you learn marketing, you learn like. I've still never had as much traffic as I did when I was 21 years old, where we had a few days where we had more traffic than the New York Times and LinkedIn and all of that, just with these like...
That's why I think what me and Simi did is such a good starting point. Like, we just figured out how to get like 1 billion eyeballs on something.
Yeah, but then at least what I felt, which maybe you felt, I'm like, dude, I don't want to do this my entire life. I don't want to be like 40 years old and like peddling how good a kisser are you quizzes. Like, it's just like not what I want to do.
Eat that shit up.
Yeah, they still do. Quizzes are eternal. It's crazy. Like, you know.
I mean, I love the business category, like building a business media company, doing like fun stories in the space and making it a bigger, growing the TAM for the kind of content with short form. But still, like romance and true crime and like all this shit is way bigger.
Yeah, we had, I think, Dr. Phil's personality quiz that like blew up, and just like the stuff that it was just crazy.
That's awesome when you can find attention arbitrage on an emerging platform.
Good.
Great place for a young entrepreneur to be.
Yeah.
Attention arbitrage.
I also want to talk about the journey evolution from being a CEO of a big company to then stepping down. And this is something you just talked about as well, is like if the company evolves and you need to move on, that is something you're open to do, which is like very humble of you. But what is that like? Like, when do you know, okay, I'm not actually a good fit for the next step or next level for this business? So is there something that like comes to mind?
I think that's the other thing that's changed a lot, like with age, is like I feel like I have less ego attached. Like initially, there's so much ego attached where I'm like, I'm not going to let someone else be the CEO of my company.
Yeah.
But then you realize, like, I don't even like being the CEO, right? Like, if you don't like being it, why have ego attached to it? And that's sort of what I felt towards the end is like, I'm not enjoying this. I don't think I'm I think I'm decent at it. I don't think I'm the best at it. There's better CEOs. I'd back myself as a founder any day, but
I think there's a big difference though between an early stage CEO and a late stage CEO.
Yeah. So from a self-awareness perspective, I think if I get to the same point this time, I'll just bounce and, you know, help out in other ways, but not necessarily be the day-to-day CEO.
And then what are those levels like? Like in terms of where you felt the most confident in your abilities? Was it 0 to 1 million? Was it 1 to 5?
I define it more by team size, because a lot of what I disliked was like processes and communication, and that's more a factor of how big the team is than revenue. So for me, I think up until the 50-ish employee size, shit was fun. It was like a blast. It felt like, wow, I can't believe I'm get paid to like do this every single day. But when 50 to 200, it just kept getting like incrementally worse.
What specifically changes at 51? And I know we're using that as an arbitrary.
Yeah, I think that I just felt like I had to start spending time convincing people to do the thing that had to be done, and all your time is spent in communication versus doing shit.
Yeah.
So
it's a lot harder to tell people what to do than to do shit.
Yeah, exactly. And that's when I realized like I would never get into politics, because the idea of spending so long just telling people to do the same thing over and over and over that you obviously know is the thing to be done.
Yeah.
It's just so frustrating.
Well, I mean, you're making a bigger political impact doing Ocho than you would ever being a politician.
Yeah, I would hope so. Yeah,
like you can't go up on stage and explain QSBS so many times.
Yeah, exactly. And at like larger companies, I just felt like we're like when internal communication became such a big focus and priority versus like growing revenue or adding customers or building a better product, it's just less fun.
There's tons of pros of having a successful exit, right? And now starting a company for the second time, way easier to recruit, way easier to raise funding.
Yep.
You also can carry in some philosophies or tactics that worked in the past. What are the challenges that like people discount or don't really factor in?
So the biggest challenge is the first time everyone kind of expects you to fail. Now I'm like, oh damn, it'd be kind of embarrassing to fail, right? Because you have this like cachet. It's like, oh, you've like done this, you know this. So I feel like my fear of failure or like desire to not fail is far greater this time.
Yeah.
Also, you get a lot of people
before.
Yeah, you also get a lot of people bullshitting you, right? Because like people kind of want to say nice shit to you now, that it's sometimes hard to discern what's real or not. Like people are going to be so much nicer. Prospective customers, like instead of telling you your product sucks, they'll like be polite because they kind of want to keep you in good terms. Forget who said this, but someone said like the trick to being a second time founder is like leveraging your own hype without actually believing it. And I think that kind of sums it up well.
Because if you believe it, you put yourself on like the cliff to fall.
Yeah, you can just delude
like,
yourself.
lose
You
your
can
belief.
delude yourself, right? Because people are gonna like always be polite. You can delude yourself that everything is fucking amazing all the time, and yeah, you gotta like just like kind of have a stronger bullshit radar.
Yeah.
because
banger
people are
quote.
gonna
Well, this was an amazing conversation. I wasn't sure quite what to expect.
Yeah.
Simi had found you on Twitter. I don't know how hard you go on personal branding content if you're that big on social.
on Twitter I do.
Twitter, you're
but,
probably
yeah.
pretty
He's
big.
like an up and coming IG influencer.
Yeah, no,
Like,
I did.
now he's doing like
did
the Alex Ramosi stuff.
I did the IG shit. It never quite worked. I'm like, this doesn't feel authentic, so I've like scaled that back. But
Yeah, you're like, I can't have done a course businesses
Yeah.
without like showing like,
Yeah.
business advice on
and
Instagram.
Also, like at least what I found is like I said yes to this because like I feel like doing this shit in person is so much better, like
heat.
than like doing I don't know the Zoom version of this.
You're a really good interviewee as well. Like you also know when the host wants to ask you a question or talk, and you also have some good standalone banger like
I've
quotes.
been on your side too, right? I've interviewed people trying to like guide the conversation in a certain way
Yeah.
or whatever. So yeah, I know.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Everybody, please leave a like if you're watching on YouTube, a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and tune into our future podcast every single Wednesday. We're going to keep the heat up. Thank you so much.
Where can everyone follow
yeah.
Ankur, and how can they learn more about Ocho?
Yeah, absolutely. Ocho.com, OCHO.com. My full name on Twitter, Ankur Nagpal, or Ankur, ANKURNA on Instagram.
All right.
Cool. Thank you so much, man.
Great. Thank you.
Great combo.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Stay frosty.
Stay frosty, everybody. The largest acquisition ever pulled off by college students. Harry Gestetner and Simon Pompin, these guys are brilliant. They built and scaled their company in 10 months to an 8-figure exit from their dorm room.